Hello, my name is Tony Diana. Welcome to Basic Ear Training for Excalibur. First thing I'd like to do is to congratulate you. You have the finest beach hunting machine available. As an Excalibur detectorist, you will want to take advantage of all the competitive benefits this machine has to offer. One of these advantages is the ability to go in and out of the water as you please. Oftentimes with Excalibur, you can eliminate the majority of your competitors by simply walking into the water. The other dramatic advantage of Excalibur is the wonderful palette of signals you can learn with practice and ear training. It has been said that the best discriminator is a shovel, but the second best discriminator is your ability to hear and recognize signals. This brings up the purpose of this CD, but before we start, a few housekeeping items. Chances are that you're listening to this CD in your car or on your home stereo. The first thing that we want to do is to check your equalization or EQ on your stereo. We want to double check your high, mid, and low controls so that they are flat or set to detent. The detent is that little notch that should click as you are turning the controls to make sure they are centered or flat. It is important that you listen to this CD without any EQ adjustment so that you can hear the true nature of the sounds and signals. Housekeeping item number 2. Do not listen to this ear training CD as an MP3 file. MP3 formats compress sounds and signals, and we do not want that. We want you to listen to the sounds and signals in their pristine state, just as they are. Item number 3. You want to be very conscious of volume at all times. There are several reasons for this. The first reason is that if you listen too loud, too often, you're going to damage your hearing. In fact, there are people out there who have hearing loss due to metal detecting. The second reason is that you can actually hear and discern the sounds and signals better if you listen at the same volume level as much as possible. We will get into why that is in a minute. The third reason to be conscious of volume is that when you play the CD the first time, your first impression will be that the signals and tones sound tiny. You will think they don't sound that small when I'm out detecting. This is because the sound source is next to your ears when you are detecting with your headphones on. So you might have to turn the car stereo up a slight bit to make the signal sound bigger and more like what you are used to hearing through your detector headphones. Another option is to listen to the ear training CD through regular stereo headphones. However you do decide to listen to this CD, make sure that your volume is not cranked up loud. Take a moment to adjust your volume while listening to these signals. Speaking of loud, another thing to be aware of is that the louder you listen to the signal, the more you will be able to hear specifically the bass, low-end frequencies. In the study of sound, this is known as the Fletcher-Munson curve. The takeaway here is that when you are using your Excalibur and when you are training with this CD, you want to listen at a sound volume that is consistent and specific to you. If you're in the habit of constantly changing your volume, that will actually change how the sounds are perceived by your ear. If you must vary the sound volume, the best thing to do is to listen at a level that is slightly lower than what you are used to. This will help train your ear to stretch and to listen for more subtle sound variations. Another thing to keep in mind is whether or not you wear a sunscreen hat, the ones with the flaps that protect your ears and your neck. They're a common favorite with detectorists working the beach. But because the flaps are between your ears and your headphones, they will actually muffle and color the sound just a bit. You will probably notice a difference if you detect without your hat, in that the signals will be brighter and more defined. In fact, as your ears become better trained, this difference can become dramatic. This brings us to one of the most important factors, hearing fatigue. The most common source of hearing fatigue is listening at too high a volume. Again, remember the best thing to do is set your volume to a comfortable level and then to bring it down slightly. It is very easy to lose track of how loud your volume is when you're competing against background noise. An example of this might be when you're at the beach and there is an air show. You might end up cranking your volume all the way up to compete against the engines of the airplanes. In this sound-crowded environment, it can be very easy to lose track of your volume setting and possibly do damage to your hearing. So remember, when in doubt, play it safe, back down on your volume. Last but not least, we have to go over a few definitions. Things like attack, sustain, and release. You may have heard the term attack referred to as ramp up, but we are going to use the more accurate musical terms. To demonstrate attack, let's listen to the sound tom. When you hear tom, the first part of the t is the attack. The sustain is the middle portion, the ah. So the attack is t, the sustain is ah, and then the release or ending is how the sound finishes. So we have an attack of t, a sustain of ah, and the release of Altogether you have tom. Attack, sustain, and release. Now, by having an increased awareness of attack, sustain, and release, you will be able to perceive the shape of the sound or signal. For example, when listening to the sound bob, you will notice the attack is b, the sustain is ah, and the release is b. So in effect, the sound bob has an attack and release that are virtually identical. And the sustain, ah, is pretty much flat in the center of the sound. So if you took the sound bob and played it backwards or forwards, it would sound pretty much the same either way. As a general rule, round sounds like bob tend to be good things like rings. In contrast, a sound like Robert has an attack of r, a sustain of aber, and a release of t. Notice that it has a variable or broken sustain, which is typical of bottle caps. Again, things like rings tend to give you a nice pop or ping signal, like the sound bob. We also want to be aware of the voice or tone of a signal. For example, if you play a piano note or a banjo note, you will notice that they are both the same note, which is D, but you have no difficulty telling apart the piano from the banjo. Thus, both notes have the same pitch, but different voicings. Listening with a critical ear for differences in voice or tone, especially with signals that have the same pitch, like the example of the piano and the banjo, is the key to successful ear training with Excalibur. We already mentioned that listening too loud can cause hearing fatigue and dramatically affect your hearing. However, as a detectorist, you need to be aware there is another way that your hearing can be temporarily but dramatically impacted. When you're bright and rested, you will hear better than when you are tired. We call this having fresh ears. So if you have been out on a long hunt and it's been a long day, you will temporarily lose the difference between a penny and a dime. Here is a penny. Here is a dime. Now, if you could tell the difference between the penny signal and the dime signal, congratulations. you have a good set of ears. I suspect you might even have some musical training in your background. If you can't hear the difference, do not worry, we'll get you there. The reason it is hard to tell the difference between the two notes is that they both have the same pitch, which is B flat on the piano. So now we have to listen for the subtle difference. I call this tasting the cinnamon in the coffee. First, let's listen to the penny signal and then the piano. Now, the dime signal and the piano. The first thing you want to notice is that the dime signal has a slightly longer release than the penny signal. The second thing you want to notice is that the dime signal has a slightly sweeter voice or tone. Now, this sweeter tone is something that you really have to listen for, but it's there. The reason why it's difficult to hear is that both the penny and the dime have virtually the identical pitch. So you have to listen for the difference in the voice or tone, and you have to listen to the difference in the release. As we get to the training runs, you're going to really want to concentrate on that difference. And you're going to want to say the name of the signal in your mind as you hear it. I'll give you an example. Penny, 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 penny. Your turn. Here goes. And now a dime. Dime, 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 dime. Your turn. And now we're going to listen for the differences. So the first four will be penny, second four will be dime. So we'll have penny, 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 dime, 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 dime. Listen for the difference. Listen for that dime to be a little bit sweeter. By now, you're probably starting to hear the difference. It's subtle, but it's there, and it's a pretty cool thing when you can hear it. Bear in mind, that's one of the toughest ones to hear. You also might be wondering, why do a penny and a dime sound so similar when you're contrasting copper with silver? It's really no surprise in that they're both highly conductive metals, and that's why they have a very similar sonic signature. This brings us to how you should use this CD. My recommendation is that you listen to it at least 3 times per week, again when you are bright and rested. I've also included a 5-minute beach hunting review module. This beach hunting review module is something you can listen to when you're driving to a beach hunt in order to review the palette of common sounds and signals. One more important thing is a word about conductivity and how it relates to your Excalibur. In general, the lower the pitch of the signal, the lower the conductivity of the metal detected. So copper, silver, and lead tend to have a higher pitch than a lower conductor such as a gold ring or a nickel. On the majority of metal detectors, rings, pull tabs, pop tops, and nickels all fall within similar areas of discrimination. This brings us to the saying that we have all heard, if you want to find the cash, you have to dig the trash. When talking to the old pros, you will often hear them say, I dig everything. In fact, there are times when digging everything is actually a very good tactical strategy. But there are also times when it is completely impractical. When you are treasure hunting with your Excalibur, your philosophy should simply be, I listen to everything and I decide what to dig. So the critical questions are, when do I pass and when do I dig and what factors should influence those decisions. In that respect, this ear training CD has two goals. First, to increase your odds as much as possible of making the right decision to dig or pass. And secondly, to increase your awareness of those odds based on reading the distinct nature of your hunting environment. So at this point, we've covered the basics of how to listen. Things like attack, sustain, and release. Listening for the shape of the signal. Listening for subtle variances and differences in the voice of the signal. Let's move on to the signal review portion of the CD, where I will cover some of the nuances of listening to the signals. Before we start signal review, a few more definitions. Let's define the term signal quality. Signal quality is made up of three things. These are signal tone, signal shape, and signal intensity. Signal tone is simply the voice of the signal. Signal shape is simply the attack, sustain, and release. Signal intensity is how loud the signal is. And signal intensity tells you one of two things: how deep an object is or how large an object is. For the purposes of this CD, we are going to concentrate our efforts on signal tone and signal shape. You also need to know I have broken up signal review into three overlapping sections. The first section is trash. The second section is common American coins, including silver and copper, and the third section is gold. I am purposely going to overlap and intermingle these three groups of signals so you can better hear and contrast the differences. So let's get started. We are going to learn the trash first. I know everybody wants to start with the gold signals, but we have to get trash out of the way. The majority of your signals are going to be trash, and the better you get at learning the typical trash signals, the easier it will be to learn the gold and silver. First is the bottle cap. The good news is that this is the easiest signal to learn. The dead giveaway is the broken, burp-like sustain in the center of the signal. Here is a group of 5 bottle cap signals. They are all different signals. Listen for the attack, sustain, and release, and pay particular attention to the sustain. Here goes. Again, what you were listening for was that irregular sustain, that bit of warble. So the sonic marker that gives away bottle caps is that Robert sound. You may have noticed that not each individual bottle cap had the same pitch. In fact, some of them were different. But by going over with multiple passes, we were able to uncover that warble sound. Now at this point, you're not going to have the confidence to bypass the bottle caps, and that's okay. As you study your ear training CD, as you're on the beach hunting, you're going to be doing more confirmation digs. Together, studying the CD, doing your confirmation digs initially, you'll gain the confidence to just walk right by those bottle caps. One very important thing to keep in mind: as you are hunting with your Excalibur on future hunts, you will want to savor this sound for a while before you dig. Listen to it with multiple coil passes and make your best pick in your mind of what you think it will be before you dig. You will find that bottle caps will be easy to pick out. As a rule, I still dig about every 8th bottle cap signal just to keep a check on my ears. Most of the time I end up laughing and I realize I need to trust my ears more. Now, one thing I have noticed lately is that some of the newer drinks with bottle caps are presenting with rounder signals. The telltale broken sustain in the middle is missing. So when I think I have a bottle cap, I do about 98-99% of the time. If I get an anomaly signal that I cannot place, I dig it, and sometimes it will be one of the newer bottle caps with round signals. Remember, whenever you are in the water or wet sand, and you are hitting the anomaly round bottle caps, you will probably find you are hitting pull tab rings and pop tops as well. This is a good sign, and it indicates one of three things. The area you are working was either not detected very well, or detected with a high level of discrimination. Remember, even when you hit round signals that turn out to be trash, or when you hit pull tab rings or pop tops, you are working an area with a higher probability for rings. It is here where you want to slow down and bring your A game to the table. You want a flat, slow, low to the ground swing, and you want to take your time and be methodical. You also want to be aware of a rule I call a high frequency of sameness. It basically tells you that when you hear the same signal over and over again, it's more than likely a trash signal. Let's say you run across a patch where you have a high density of bottle caps, or pull tab rings, or pop tops, or even pennies. By carefully ruling out the signals that sound exactly the same, you can pass on these digs and move on to the more promising tones. But remember, before you can do this, you have to have confidence in your ear training. So here is a realistic scenario for you. You're at a popular beach and you're moving towards the pier. As you get closer to the pier, you start hitting more and more trash signals. In particular, you're hitting bottle cap signals. And again, remember, for the bottle cap, you're listening to that sustain in the middle that's broken, that burp-like sound. Remember, the signals can even have different pitches, but when they have that burp-like, broken, variable sustain, you know they're bottle caps. So let's see how well you do at picking out the bob signals, the round signals, the ones without broken sustain. Here goes. Signal 1. Signal 2. Signal 3. Signal 4. Signal 5. Signal 6. Now, if you picked signal number 4, congratulations, you got it right. In fact, you're probably thinking, hey, that was pretty easy. I could hear the difference. Not only could you hear the difference in the attack, sustain, and release, but more than likely, you also heard the difference in the voicing or the tone of the sound. Take another listen with the bottle cap and the gold ring right next to each other. Did you notice, not only is the ring a round sound, it is a much more pleasing sound to the human ear. Here lies the big advantage of Excalibur. It was designed with gold in mind. Gold simply sounds better on Excalibur. The key thing to remember is to always read the conditions and apply your ear training accordingly. This will help you dig the high probability targets. Now, as a beach hunter, you are sometimes going to venture into the dry sand. And of course, the dry sand is littered with bottle caps, pull tab rings, pop tops, and can slaw. Remember, part of ear training is doing everything possible to increase your odds of digging the good targets. The bottle caps are easy to rule out and pass on, but here's a trick that will help you identify the pop tops and pull tab rings. I keep a penny in my left shoe and a pop top in my right shoe. These are instant ear checks. You can even cut a slit in the molded EVA of your water shoe and push the items in with a screwdriver. Not too close to the toes, so you don't have to worry about false signals from your coil swing. With these ear checks in place, you can listen, compare, decide, and then dig or pass and move on. This is also a great reference to have when your ears are tired, especially if you haven't heard signals for a while. This gives you an instant reference point that is very helpful. Now, the next signal we are going to concentrate on is aluminum. I like to categorize it as aluminum because it covers cans, can slaw, pop tops, and pull tab rings. First, let's listen to Excalibur sweeps over a pop top. Then over a pull tab ring. The key thing to listen for when identifying aluminum is the mids. The mids are simply middle frequencies that tend to be harsh or annoying to the human ear. The annoying mids are most noticeable with aluminum signals. Bearing in mind that the physical shape of the item being detected will affect the sound. Pop tops tend to reflect more of the annoying mids than other shapes of aluminum, and I will illustrate that here. First, the sound of the pop top. Now I will play the signals again, but this time with my equipment. I will boost the sounds you were listening for, specifically the annoying mid frequencies. Remember, these are the cinnamon sounds in the sonic coffee, so imprint these annoying mids as much as possible, and your ear will get a better feel for aluminum. Now I am going to play both signals next to each other for comparison. The first is a pop top. The second is a pop top where I have boosted the annoying mids so you know what to listen for in the signal. Here goes. So the sonic marker that gives away the pull tab rings and the pop tops is the annoying mid frequencies. Contrast this with the bottle caps, where the sonic marker was the broken sustain. So by now you can hear that different signals have different sonic markers. It can be the attack, sustain, release, or shape of the signal. It can be the tone of the signal and how pleasing it is to the human ear. At this point, I want to try something. I'm going to play 4 bottle cap signals, 4 penny signals, 4 dime signals, and 4 pop top signals. Just listen for the differences between the signal groups. Here goes. Bottle cap. Penny. Dime. Pop top. You more than likely noticed that out of the 4 signals, the bottle cap was the easiest to pick out. The penny signal almost seems to be saying penny, 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 penny. Just the attack, sustain, release seems to sound like the word penny. And the dime signal seems to sound thinner, like a dime, and a bit sweeter. You may be thinking that some things are starting to sound very similar. For example, the pop top might have sounded a bit like the penny. But then again, if we play them right next to each other, you'll be able to tell the difference. Here's the penny first, then the pop top. If you are feeling like everything is starting to sound the same, that's okay. That just means you need to take a break, give your ears a rest, and come back later. Give yourself about 20 minutes of not listening to anything, but just give your ears time to refresh and come back, and it'll make a difference. I should point out, I have thrown 2 tough challenges at you. The first one was hearing the difference between a penny and a dime. That's one of the toughest things to hear. The second tough challenge was hearing and listening for those annoying mid-frequencies in the aluminum pop tops and pull tabs. That's no easy task. It comes with time, and you'll pick it up the more you listen to the signals. Now keep in mind, later in the CD, we are going to have training runs where you can listen specifically to things like aluminum, copper, silver, and gold. So for right now, you want to relax, understand the concept of what we're listening for, and above all, don't try too hard to listen to the differences. You'll have more than plenty of time to review this in the training runs. So far, we have covered the infamous bottle cap and aluminum in the forms of pop tops, pull tab rings, bringing us to beer cans. Bear in mind, most of the time these will be huge signals that overdrive your Excalibur. The one caution with beer cans is that you don't want to pass over something large like a watch that is close to the surface. You will typically find your beer cans buried in the dry sand or in the high wet sand. You will find that they are difficult to shape. And what I mean by that is it will be very difficult to find an attack, sustain, and release. The beer cans reflect such a big signal that again they're going to overwhelm your Excalibur. Take another listen and you'll see what I mean. First, the aluminum can signal. And now compare that to a very large Seiko stainless steel watch. The majority of the time, the aluminum cans will be shallow, and you will know them because they will overdrive your detector. But every once in a while, you're going to end up digging one when they're deep, and here's why. Here's the same aluminum can buried deeply. And here's that Seiko stainless steel watch again. One trick to check for beer cans. If you hear the signal with multiple sweeps and you suspect it's a beer can, lift your coil off the sand about 10 to 12 inches and make multiple sweeps again. If you still hear a huge signal, chances are that's a beer can. But if the signal disappears when you swing the coil 10 to 12 inches off the ground, or if the signal is very small in terms of volume and intensity, then you definitely want to check that signal. Chances are it's not a beer can. If you do find that the object is big, but you can ascertain an attack, sustain, release, and it's sharp, then it's definitely worth digging. Again, you want to read your conditions and hunt accordingly. This brings us to can slaw. Can slaw simply is the broken aluminum cans that have been in the ocean for a while. Can slaw tends to be the dreaded anomaly in that it can sound very similar to gold, especially can slaw that is old or a bit crumpled or even has holes in it. Here are some examples of can slaw signals. Here's a different one. I suggest you do not spend a lot of time trying to learn can slaw, as we will be doing a side-by-side comparison with gold. The thing to be aware of is that you're going to end up digging some can slaw. There's no way around it, and that it will sometimes present too close to gold to pass on. The reason we will end up digging can slaw is because can slaw and foil tend to have the same voice as gold. I'll give you a comparison. Here's can slaw first, and then gold. You will notice the gold has a slightly shorter attack than the can slaw. The gold also tends to sound just a bit more pleasing to the human ear. In fact, if you listen with fresh ears, you can pick up some of those annoying mids in the aluminum. However, it is difficult to hear. Take another listen. Remember, the first signals are can slaw. The second group of signals are gold. Tune in with a critical ear and listen for differences in attack, in mid frequencies, and listen for which signal has the more pleasing voice. Part of ear training with your Excalibur is learning the strengths and the vulnerabilities of your detector. I find that weathered and worn can slaw is just too close to call, so I dig it. And this naturally brings us to discussing the voice of gold, that texture of graininess, sometimes referred to as sponginess, that buzzing sound. Again, it is a sound that is more pleasing to the human ear. I will play a series of gold rings. You will notice they have different pitches, but if you listen in the voice, you can hear that same graininess. Here goes. Signal 1. Signal 2. Signal 3. Signal 4. Signal 5. Two things to point out. If the coil of the metal detector was not swung in a flat fashion, it actually affected the attack of the signal. This is one reason why I don't trust my ears when it comes to distinguishing can slaw from gold. The second thing to point out is that signal number 3 was a gold wedding band, however it presented with a remarkably higher pitch. I'll play it again. In fact, signal number 3 not only has a higher pitch, it also has some of those annoying mids. Take one more listen to signal number 3. Now for comparison, I will play the classic Excalibur Gold sound. In the classic signal, it was easier to hear the pleasing voice of gold, that spongy, grainy quality. You can also hear the attack, sustain, and release that were symmetrical for that nice bob sound. I call signal number 3 a gold anomaly. It is a gold ring, however, because of the alloys that were mixed within the process of making the ring, it doesn't give that lower graininess that is so recognizable and so classic to gold with Excalibur. Let's do a bit of comparing with signal number 3. Here goes. Now an aluminum pop top. Now a penny. Remember your sonic markers. For the gold ring, you want to hear that pleasing tone and graininess. With that pop top, you want to listen for those annoying mid-frequencies. And for that penny, you want to hear that long drawn-out signal that sounds like penny, 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 penny. Here we go, have a listen again. Here is Anomaly Gold. Aluminum pop top. Penny. Even in pointing out the differences, gold signal number 3, the anomaly gold, and the pop top signal still sound very similar. This is why I call it anomaly gold. Now I have found that about 70% of gold signals tend to be that nice classic gold tone. But about 20 to 30% of them will be the gold rings with alloy that give you that pop top or pull tab ring sound. So the takeaway here is that anomaly gold presents about 30% of the time, and it sounds pretty much exactly like a pop top or pull tab ring. The way we apply this to our ear training is that when you're in the water or you're in the wet sand, you want to have a high bias towards digging pull tab rings and pop tops. This bias towards digging these signals becomes more important the closer you get and the deeper you get into the water. But you still want to dig the classic lower tone gold sounds first. I also want to point out there are 3 types of anomaly signals. The first is the pleasant surprise anomaly. That's when you think you have a pull tab or pop top or a deep penny and it turns out to be a gold ring. Usually these pleasant surprise anomalies present more in the water where you have more of a bias for digging pennies, for digging pop tops, and for digging pull tab rings. Then there are the false alarm anomalies. Those signals where you get a nice, grainy, low tone and you think it just might be gold and it turns out to be a piece of old, weathered can slaw. Remember that by digging these signals, you are hunting effectively and increasing the odds of hitting gold with your Excalibur. You will also find that the more you ear train with live hunting and with your CD, the more you will increase your intuitive ability to successfully pick out those gold signals. And then there's the third anomaly. That's when you hit a signal and you listen to it and you say to yourself, man, I have no idea what that is. And those you usually end up digging just out of sheer curiosity. Here's an example of what I mean. Pay attention to the signature of the attack, sustain, release. You'll notice it's very unusual. This anomaly signal was a cell phone. You cannot learn the anomaly signals. They vary too much and there's too many of them. So as a general rule, if it's an unusual signal, you want to dig it. As a recap, you want to bear in mind that anomaly gold is out there and it sounds like aluminum pop tops and pull tab rings. The good news is that 70% of your gold signals will be that classic Excalibur grainy, spongy tone. The classic Excalibur gold signal is easy to recognize. I will play the gold signals again, but this time without the anomaly gold. Again, while those are all different rings and they have slightly different tones, you could recognize that classic gold voicing in each signal. It sounds like they're all definitely members of the same family. Now let's move on to silver. First, let's listen to a few signals. Here is a clad dime. Here is a silver dime. Here's a Morgan silver dollar. And here is an 8 real. Let's throw in a large silver chain stretched out from left to right. You probably noticed that despite the differences in the sizes of the objects, like the chain and the Morgan silver dollar and the dime, that you could still hear the same voice for all the silver targets. This voice is especially easy to distinguish, like the bottle cap. This is because silver has a high pitch, or a high voice, and a bit of a sweeter tone than almost any other signal. You will find that even when your ears are tired, sometimes you can intuitively tell that it is a silver target. Now at this point in the ear training CD, you are already starting to listen with a more critical ear. And so you probably picked up the slight difference in tone between a silver dime and a clad dime. Let's review that. The first signals will be a silver mercury dime. The second group of signals will be a clad dime. Here goes. Isn't it interesting how the mercury dime's higher silver content makes it sound sweeter in tone? It almost sounds a bit reedy, a bit grainy. And yet compare that to the clad dime and you could hear a bit of the mids from the alloys that are used. Take another listen. First, the mercury dime signals, and then the clad dime signals. Here goes. The takeaway is that it is a bit easier to hear and distinguish silver items such as rings and silver coins compared to clad quarters and clad dimes. Hearing this difference will become intuitive and automatic, and your ear will tell you that the sweeter tone is probably a better silver target like a ring. Now let's take another listen to copper. Here is a zinc-clad penny. Now here is an all-copper wheat penny. So just like a clad dime compared to a silver dime had the same voice, and yet you could hear a little bit more of the mids in the clad dime, the same thing applies to the penny. The clad penny compared to the all-copper wheat penny still have the same voice, but you can just barely hear a little bit more mids in the clad penny. Take another listen. The first 8 signals will be the clad penny. The second 8 signals will be the wheat all-copper penny. The majority of your copper signals will be clad pennies, and that's what we're going to use on your training runs. Also, you want to be aware that copper varies within itself like gold. For example, listen to this signal of a large copper bangle. Again, we're going to concentrate our efforts on training for the clad penny so that you can rule out and pass on that signal if and when you desire. Moving on to a different type of coin. The one coin we have not talked about is the nickel. When you hear a signal and your mental pick is that there's a good chance it's a nickel, your most common mistake will probably be a pop top. Nickel sounds very similar to the pop top in that it reflects the mids. Here's a nickel. Now an aluminum pop top. Notice the voice of the aluminum pop top has a higher pitch and tends to reflect the mids more than the nickel does. The nickel has a lower pitch and tends to sound like the gold signals or gold rings that have higher voices, similar to the anomaly gold. Take another listen to the nickel and the aluminum pop top. When you hear the typical nickel signal, it will usually be one of 3 things. Either a nickel, an aluminum pop top, or possibly an anomaly gold ring. You will find, however, that the more you hunt and the more you ear train, you will be able to increase your ability to pick out the voice of the nickel. The fun thing about digging the nickel signals is they tend to be a wild card. You're really never sure what you're going to get. So now let's move on to the training runs. Remember, as you listen to the target, say the name of the item over and over in your mind, such as penny, 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 penny. This will help form that synaptic link that will help you recognize that signal intuitively. Also, I want to let you know that when you hear the platinum ring, this particular ring has a long, slender shape and then is large at one side. And accordingly, you will hear a long attack and then a short sustain and release. So keep that in mind when you hear the platinum signal. So let's go practice the training runs. Training runs. Say the name of the signal or think of it in your mind as you hear it. Clad penny. Clad dime. Clad quarter. A nickel. Aluminum pop top. Aluminum pull tab ring. Classic bottle cap signals. Six different classic gold rings with 3 signals from each ring. Platinum ring. Four bottle caps, 4 gold rings, repeating. Silver real on edge, which is like any silver coin on edge. Mercury head dime, horizontal. Four nickel, 4 pop top, repeating. Four penny, 4 dime, repeating. Chewing gum wrapper foil. Classic Excalibur Gold sound. This concludes the training runs. Beach Hunting Review Module. Classic Gold Ring Signals. Platinum Ring Signals. Silver Dollar Signals. Cross-checking, same silver dollar in all metal. Silver mercury dime signals. Silver ring with intricate cut patterns. A 1961 silver quarter on edge. Classic bottle cap signals. Aluminum pop-top signals. A different brand aluminum pop-top signal. Aluminum pull tab rings. Nickel signals. Clad penny signals. And let's end with, once again, classic gold ring signal. This concludes the beach hunting review module. Stay safe, fill in your holes, and best of luck.